Good morning, everyone. We're here again. We're back with the Chronological Life Application Study Bible. And today we're on page 43, reading the birth and near death of Isaac.
No, if you know, you know. Let's get into it.
God was faithful to his promise to give Abraham and Sarah a son of their own who would carry on the covenant blessings that God had given to this chosen family. But when Isaac was a young man, Abraham faced an unthinkable test of his faith in God's promise. The birth of Isaac. The Lord kept his word and did for Sarah exactly what he had promised. She became pregnant and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. This happened at just the time God had said it would. And Abraham named their son Isaac. 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And Sarah declared, "God has brought me laughter. All who hear about this will laugh at me." Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse a baby? Yet I have given Abraham a son in his old age. Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. When Isaac grew up and was about to be weaned, Abraham prepared a huge feast to celebrate the occasion. But Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and her Egyptian servant Hagar making fun of her son, Isaac. So she turned to Abraham and demanded, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son. He is not going to share the inheritance with my son Isaac. I won't have it." This upset Abraham very much because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham, "Do not be upset over the boy and your servant. Do whatever Sarah tells you, for Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. But I will also make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because he is your son too." So Abraham got up early the next morning, prepared food and a container of water, and strapped them on Hagar's shoulders. Then he told her away with their son. Then he sent her away with their son, and she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, she put the boy in the shade of a bush. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. "I don't want to watch the boy die," she said as she burst into tears. But God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, "Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants." Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water. She quickly filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as she grew up in the wilderness. He became a skillful archer, and he settled in the wilderness of Paran. His mother arranged for him to marry a woman from the land of Egypt. Abraham's covenant with Abimelech. About this time, Abimelech came with Phicol, his army commander, to visit Abraham. "God is obviously with you, helping you in everything you do," Abimelech said. "Swear to me in God's name that you will never deceive me, my children, or any of my descendants. I have been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country where you are living as a foreigner." Abraham replied, "Yes, I swear to it." Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken by force from Abraham's servants. "This is the first I've heard of it," Abimelech answered. "I have no idea who is responsible. You have never complained about this before." Abraham then gave some of his sheep, goats, and cattle to Abimelech and they made a treaty. But Abraham also took 7 additional female lambs and set them off by themselves. Abimelech asked, "Why have you set these 7 apart from the others?" Abraham replied, "Please accept these 7 lambs to show your agreement that I dug this well." Then he named the place Beersheba, which means well of the oath, because that was where they had sworn the oath. After making their covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he worshipped the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham lived as a foreigner in Philistine country for a long time. Abraham's faith tested. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. "Abraham," he called. "Yes," he replied, "here I am." "Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you." The next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. "Stay here with the donkey," Abraham told the servants. "The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back." So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "We have the fire and the wood," the boy said. "But where is the sheep for the burnt offering?" "God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son," Abraham answered, and they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood, and Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Yes," Abraham replied, "here I am." "Don't lay a hand on the boy," the angel said. "Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son." Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. "This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me." Then they returned to the servants and traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest was named Uz. The next oldest was Booz. I don't know. Followed by Kemuel, the ancestor of the Arameans. Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. In addition to these 8 sons from Milcah, Nahor had 4 other children from his concubine Rumah. Their names were Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. The burial of Sarah. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There, Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, "Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial." The Hittites replied to Abraham, "Listen, my lord, you are an honored prince among us. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way." Then Abraham bowed low before the Hittites and said, "Since you are willing to help me in this way, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me buy his cave at Machpelah, down at the end of his field. I will pay the full price in the presence of witnesses, so I will have a permanent burial place for my family." Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the Hittite elders of the town. "No, my lord," he said to Abraham, "please listen to me. I will give you the field and the cave. Here in the presence of my people, I give it to you. Go and bury your dead." Abraham again bowed low before the citizens of the land, and he replied to Ephron as everyone listened, "No, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "My lord, please listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver. But what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead." So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price and paid the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah, near Mamre. This included the field itself, the cave that was in it, and all the surrounding trees. It was transferred to Abraham as his permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gates. Then Abraham buried his wife, Sarah, there in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave was transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for use as a permanent burial place. It did. It really tried. It tried so hard to take one. Oh, what got you? Oh.
Nelly,
So, to listen up, sorry. Who could have believed that Abraham would have a son at 100 years of age and live to raise him to adulthood? But doing the impossible is everyday business for God. Our big problems won't seem so impossible if we let God handle them. After repeated promises, a visit by 2 angels, and the appearance of the Lord himself, Sarah finally cried out with surprise and joy at the birth of her son. Because of her doubt, worry, and fear, she had forfeited the peace she could have felt in God's wonderful promise to her. The way to bring peace to a troubled heart is to focus on God's promises. Trust him to do what he says. We have a profile on Isaac to read. In a family of forceful initiators, Isaac was the quiet, mind-my-own-business type, unless he was specifically called on to take action. In his own family, he was the protected only only child from the time Sarah got rid of Ishmael until Abraham arranged his marriage to Rebekah. In his own family, Isaac had the patriarchal position, but Rebekah had the power. And rather than stand his ground, Isaac found it easier to compromise or lie to avoid confrontations. In spite of these shortcomings, Isaac was part of God's plan. The model his father gave him included a priceless gift of faith in the one true God. God's promise to create a great nation through which he would bless the world was passed on by Isaac to his son Jacob. It is usually not hard to identify with Isaac in his weaknesses, but consider for a moment that God works through people in spite of and often through their shortcomings. As you pray, put into words your desire to be available to God. You will discover that his willingness to use you is even greater than your desire to be used. Strengths and accomplishments. He was the first descendant in fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham. He demonstrated great patience. Weaknesses and mistakes. Under pressure, he tended to lie. In conflict, he sought to avoid confrontation. He played favorites between his sons and alienated his wife. Lessons from his life. Patience often brings rewards. God keeps his promises. He remains faithful, though we are often faithless. Playing favorites is sure to bring family conflict. Vital statistics. Where various places in the southern part of Palestine, including Beersheba. Occupation, wealthy livestock owner. Relatives, parents, Abraham and Sarah, half-brother Ishmael, wife Rebekah, twin sons Jacob and Esau. Key verse. But God replied, "No, Sarah, your wife, will give birth to a son for you. You will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my covenant with him and his descendants as an everlasting covenant." Genesis 17:19. Isaac's story is told in Genesis 17:15-35, 29. He is also mentioned in Romans 9:7-10, Hebrews 11, and James 2. What happened to Ishmael, and who are his descendants? Ishmael became the founder of a large tribe or nation. The Ishmaelites were nomads living in the wilderness of Sinai and Paran, south of Israel. One of Ishmael's daughters married Esau, Ishmael's nephew. The Bible pictures the Ishmaelites as hostile to Israel and to God in Psalms 83:5-6. Beersheba, the southernmost city of Israel, lay on the edge of a vast desert that stretched as far as Egypt to the southwest and Mount Sinai to the south. The area described as being from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south was often used to describe the traditional boundaries of the Promised Land. Beersheba's southern location and the presence of several wells in the area may explain why Abraham settled there. Beersheba was also the home of Isaac, Abraham's son. God tested Abraham, not to trip him and watch him fall, but to deepen his capacity to obey God and thus to develop his character. Just as fire refines ore to extract precious metals, God refines us through difficult circumstances. When we are tested, we can complain or we can try to see how God is stretching us to develop our character. That morning, Abraham began one of the greatest acts of obedience in recorded history. He traveled 50 miles to Mount Moriah, near the site of Jerusalem. Over the years, he had learned many tough lessons about the importance of obeying God. This time, his obedience was prompt and complete. Obeying God is often a struggle because it may mean giving up something we truly want. We should not expect our obedience to God to be easy or to come naturally. We don't know how Abraham carried the fire. Perhaps he carried a live coal or a flint to start a fire. Why did God ask Abraham to perform human sacrifice? Pagan nations practiced human sacrifice, but God condemned this as a terrible sin in Leviticus 20:1-5. God did not want Isaac to die, but he wanted Abraham to sacrifice Isaac in his heart so it would be clear that Abraham loved God more than he loved his promised, long-awaited son. God was testing Abraham. The purpose of testing is to strengthen our character and deepen our commitment to God and his perfect timing. Through this difficult experience, Abraham strengthened his commitment to obey God. He also learned about God's ability to provide. It is difficult to let go of what we deeply love. What could be more proper than to love your only child? Yet, when we do give to God what he asks, he returns to us far more than we could dream. The spiritual benefits of his blessings far outweigh our sacrifices. Have you withheld your love, your children, or your time from him? Trust him to provide. Notice the parallel between the ram offered on the altar as a substitute for Isaac and Christ offered on the cross as a substitute for us. Whereas God stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son, God did not spare his own son, Jesus, from dying on the cross. If Jesus had lived, the rest of humankind would have died. God sent his only son to die for us so that we could be spared from the eternal death we deserve and instead receive eternal life. Abraham received abundant blessings because he obeyed God. God promised to give Abraham's descendants the ability to conquer their enemies. In addition, God promised Abraham children and grandchildren who would in turn bless the whole earth. People's lives would be changed as a result of knowing the faith of Abraham and his descendants. We often think of blessings as gifts that we will enjoy, but when God blesses us, he also wants us to share our blessings in overflow to others, today and into eternity. In Abraham's day, death and burial were steeped in ritual and traditions. Failing to honor a dead person demonstrated the greatest possible lack of respect. An improper burial was the equivalent of a curse. Mourning was an essential part of the death ritual. Friends and relatives would cry loudly for the whole neighborhood to hear. Because there were no funeral homes or undertakers, these same friends and relatives would help prepare the body for burial, which usually would take place on the same day because of the warm climate. Abraham was in a foreign land looking for a place to bury his wife. Strangers offered to help him because he was an honored prince and they respected him. Although Abraham had not put down roots in the area, his reputation was above reproach. Those who invest their time and money in serving God often earn a pleasant return on their investment, a good reputation, and the respect of others. The polite interchange between Abraham and Ephron was typical of bargaining at that time. Ephron graciously offered to give his land to Abraham at no charge. Abraham insisted on paying for it. Ephron politely mentioned the price but said in effect that it wasn't important. Abraham paid the 400 shekels of silver. Both men knew what was going on as they went through the bargaining process. If Abraham had accepted the land as a gift when it was offered, he would have insulted Ephron, who then would have rescinded his offer. Many Middle Eastern shopkeepers still follow this bargaining ritual with their customers. For the price of property Abraham bought 400 pieces of silver was an outrageous price. The Hittites weren't thrilled about foreigners buying their property, so Abraham had little bargaining leverage. The custom of the day was to ask double the fair market value of the land, fully expecting the buyer to offer half the stated price. But Abraham didn't even bargain. He simply paid the initial price. He was not trying to take anything he didn't deserve. Even though God had promised the land to Abraham, he did not just take it away from Ephron. Abraham wanted Isaac to marry within the family. This was a common... That is for tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hagar. Escape of some kind is usually the most tempting solution to our problems. Hagar was a person who used that approach. When the going got tough, she got going in the other direction. However, it is worthwhile to note that the biggest challenges Hagar faced were brought on by other people's choices. Sarah chose her to bear Abraham's child, and Hagar probably had little to say in the matter. It isn't hard to understand how Hagar's pregnancy caused her to look down on Sarah. But that brought on hard feelings, and Sarah consequently punished Hagar. This motivated her first escape. When she returned to the family and gave birth to Ishmael, Sarah's continued barrenness must have contributed to bitterness on both sides. When Isaac was finally born, Sarah looked for any excuse to have Hagar and Ishmael sent away. She found it when she caught Ishmael teasing Isaac. In the wilderness, out of water and facing the death of her son, Hagar once again tried to escape. She walked away so she wouldn't have to watch her son die. Once again, God graciously intervened. Have you noticed how patiently God operates to make our escape attempts fail? Have you begun to learn that escape is only a temporary solution? God's continual desire is for us to face our problems with His help. We experience His help most clearly and through conflicts and difficulties, not away from them. Are there problems in your life for which you've been using the Hagar solution? Choose one of those problems, ask for God's help, and begin to face it today. Strength and accomplishment. Mother of Abraham's first child, Ishmael, who became the founder of the Arab nations. Weaknesses and mistakes. When faced with problems, she tended to run away. Her pregnancy brought out strong feelings of pride and arrogance. Lessons from her life. God is faithful to His plan and promises, even when humans complicate the process. God shows Himself as one who knows us and wants to be known by us. Vital statistics. Where? Canaan and Egypt. Occupation, servant, mother. Relatives, son, Ishmael. Key verse. The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." Genesis 16:9. Hagar's story is told in Genesis 16. She is also mentioned in Galatians 4. That was the readings of the morning. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you'll subscribe, follow us on Twitch, and like the video. Leave a comment if you feel like it. We live every morning. We post every day. Thanks. Peace.